Let's take a look together at the vinyl cutter and what it can and can't do and how it does it. It's also a great tool to learn the basics of using the Makerspace and digital design tools. The vinyl cutter uses a computer and a digital design tool to control a simple crafts blade and cut intricate designs. It only cuts vinyl either as sticker sheets or heat transfer sheets. The results are very close to what the laser cutter would be able to do and uses a lot of the same tools. Because it has belts and blades, keep your hands clear when the vinyl cutter is cutting a design. To use the vinyl cutter, start by turning it on with the switch on the left-hand side. The control screen will turn on, and you'll find next to it the control panel for your speed and force settings. Pushing the on/off line button lets you use these same controls to move the blade left and right, and to move the rollers for your vinyl sheets up and down. When you're done, just press Enter to return to your speed and force settings. To access the blade, we can just push the on/off line button and move the blade carrier to the left to have better access to the blade and the blade holder. Unscrew it from the carrier head and lift the blade holder out. This is what the blade holder looks like. That silver ring lets you adjust how deep the blade goes, and that gold ring locks the depth of that blade. Let's loosen the gold ring first, and then use the silver ring to adjust depth. Patrons often ask what is a good blade depth for the vinyl cutter. It's really pretty simple. If the blade is barely poking out of the holder, and if you can barely feel it against your finger, then that's the correct depth, or at least a good place to start. Once you're happy with the depth of your blade, use the gold ring to lock it in place. There's a couple ways to test the depth of your blade. The first uses a scrap piece of vinyl, and you're just going to give it a light cut with the blade in the blade holder. If the vinyl layer is cleanly cut and the sheet under is intact, then you're good to go. If you're happy with your test, drop and tighten the blade holder back in place in the vinyl cutter, and let's get ready to load a vinyl sheet in the machine. If you're not using a full sheet of vinyl, you can always use the cutting mat to get a better support for your piece of vinyl. In this example, I'll be using a scrap sheet of vinyl, which is why I'm using the cutting mat. We can use a little scraper to make sure it sticks well to the vinyl mat. And load that mat into the vinyl cutter from the front of the cutter. We can use the ridges on the front of the vinyl cutter to make sure the mat is nice and straight into the vinyl cutter. Push the lever in the back to clamp the cutting mat down and make sure it stays in place. Then use the on/off line button and the arrows to set the starting point of the cutter. When your starting point is set, remember to push the Enter button and check your speed and force settings. Finally, push the Test button on the vinyl cutter. It will cut a simple design that will let you test whether your blade is correctly set up. When the vinyl cutter stops, lift the lever in the back to release the cutting mat and check your vinyl cut. Same as earlier, if the vinyl sheet has been cut cleanly and the carrier sheet is intact, great! Otherwise, go through the setup steps again until you're happy with the results. Let's make ourselves some custom tags and practice using the vinyl cutter. Here are the tools we will need. We'll start with your favorite measuring device, a scraper for application and making sure stuff is flat, a craft's pick and a craft's blade to cut and peel vinyl off, and of course we'll need some vinyl sheets. Pick whatever colors you like. Finally, some notebooks to customize. Let's measure how big our decal should be. Masking tape completely optional, it just helps me see the work area better. Measure the width and height with your ruler and write it down somewhere. Now, let's go prep our design in the design software, Vinyl Master Cut. This is the design tool we'll be using, and this is what our tags will look like. You can create them with a simple rectangle, then another rectangle inside with a different color. We will line everything up nicely later. Just add some text. I went ahead with my name. I usually use Arial or Futura fonts because they're very easy to read. They are great for custom labels and signs. Now, let's start polishing our design and lining everything up. Let's recolor and align our text, followed by the rectangle all the way in the back. And finally, the color rectangle just behind our text. For this, continue using the Align and Distribute tool. It's in the Arrange menu under Align and Distribute. Since we've resized some elements, we need to realign them. We will be centering each element to each other, horizontally and vertically. Having all the elements in place makes it easier for us to resize these different elements as well. Keep tweaking everything until you're happy with how things are positioned and how big each element is relative to each other. This step might take a little while as you test different combinations to see what you like best. That's completely fine, just take all the time you need and remember, it's completely okay to experiment with digital design, since you can always undo what you just did and roll back to your previous step anyway. Since our design has 2 different colors on 3 different layers, we will need to use registration marks. These marks will help us line up each sticker layer to each other. For that purpose, I like to use small squares, 3 would be enough for this, and fill them with the registration color you can find on the right-hand side of the screen. Click the blade icon at the top of your screen to send your job to the vinyl cutter. You will notice each layer is separated by color, giving you an idea of what the cutting job will look like. Put your sheet of vinyl on the cutting mat. I'll be starting with the white sheet of vinyl. Make sure that sheet is nice and flat on the mat and load it through the front of the vinyl cutter. Try to balance the rollers on each side of the mat. It'll help the sheet stay straight as it goes back and forth. Then lock the rollers in place with the lever. And use the on/off line button to position the blade where you want it to start. Then let's go back to Vinyl Master Cut. Select the contrast background and the registration marks, and click the icon at the top of the screen to check that everything looks correct, then click Cut Now. The vinyl cutter will just take it from here, cutting your design as intended. Check that everything cut correctly, then prep your vinyl sheet in the same way as earlier. just positioning the blade past the first cut that we did on this sheet. Other than that, it's the exact same process as earlier. Taking the time to set up multiple cuts on the same sheet will help you save time and materials. Back to Vinyl Master Cut. This time we select the text and the registration marks, click the blade icon on top, and once again send to the vinyl cutter, and confirm. Once again, the vinyl cutter takes it from here. Finally, let's load our red vinyl in the vinyl cutter, and as usual, position it correctly along the ridges at the front of the cutter. Once again, we'll be using the on/offline button to make sure it starts in the right place. This time, we'll select the red layer and the registration marks, click the icon on top, and send it to the vinyl cutter. This time, I'm also demonstrating the area test, a button you can click that will have the vinyl cutter show you how much space your vinyl cut is going to take and whether you have anything in the way or not. If you're happy with it, after the area test is done, just click the Cut Now button. As usual, as soon as the vinyl cutter starts moving and cutting, keep your hands clear of the machine. Each layer of our design is now cut. We just need to remove the excess vinyl and apply each layer to our notebook. Removing that extra material is called weeding. Grab one of the craft's pick to grab one of the corners of the vinyl and gently peel it off. This is a step where smaller details, and maybe even the registration marks, will want to peel off the vinyl sheet. As long as you're careful and take your time, everything should be just fine. Next, use a craft's blade to cut out the vinyl pieces for each layer. And apply these pieces face down to the transfer paper available at the Makerspace. Peel the backing off of each vinyl sticker piece and apply your layers in the correct order to your notebook. Remember to use the registration marks to make sure each layer is correctly positioned to the previous layer. Once again, remember to take your time. Finally, remove the registration marks and you're done. You now know everything you need to make your own custom tags. And you can customize much more than notebooks. You can also play with different colors and fonts. Remember to share your creations with us, and see you soon at the Makerspace!